celebrated bird songs in East and Southeast Asia. For centuries, it's been kept in cages by songbird collectors, not for how it looks, but for how it sings. Its voice can be soft and lonely, or bold and dramatic, sometimes in the same breath. And unlike many birds, the huain doesn't just repeat the same tune, it improvises. Yes, this bird freestyles, but here's the catch. Despite its popularity in traditional culture, the huain is increasingly hard to find in the wild, especially in northern Vietnam, Laos, and southern China. Habitat loss and capture for the pet trade have quieted many once loud forests. So if you ever hike through a jungle trail and hear a melody that makes you stop mid-step, pause. Close your eyes, because even if you don't see the bird, you might just be listening to a master at work. A bird so colorful, it looks like someone pressed shuffle on the palette. If a rainbow ever exploded in a forest, this is probably what it would look like. The fairy pita is one of Southeast Asia's most colorful birds, and yet it's one of the hardest to spot. It lives in the dense lowland forests of Vietnam, Laos, Taiwan, and southern China, slipping through bamboo thickets and damp undergrowth like a living jewel. And jewel really isn't an exaggeration. This bird wears almost every color in the crayon box. Green on the back, blue on the wings, red on the belly, yellow and buff on the sides, black streaks on the face, and somehow it works. All of it comes together in a compact, robin-sized body that looks like it shouldn't be real. But it is, and it's fast. Fairy pitas are secretive ground dwellers. They spend most of their time foraging in leaf litter, hopping instead of walking, picking out worms and insects with that sharp little beak. You rarely see them in flight, and when you do, it's a flash, and then gone. They're quiet, alert, and hardwired for stealth. That's why many birders spend years just hoping to glimpse one. But here's something unexpected. Even though they breed in East Asia, many fairy pitas migrate all the way to Borneo for winter. That's over 2,000 miles for a bird barely 7 inches long. They make the journey alone. No flocks, no guidance, just instinct and invisible maps passed down through generations. And one more thing, they're called fairy not just because of their colors, but because they appear suddenly and vanish just as fast. So if you ever think you saw one, you probably didn't. But maybe, just maybe, it saw you first. You won't see it, but it knows you're there. Most birds live in the trees. This one lives in the shadows beneath them. Meet the white-cheeked partridge, a small ground-dwelling bird found in the forests of Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar. You probably won't see it, but it might be watching you. This bird is the definition of stealth. It spends most of its life quietly walking through leaf litter on the forest floor, foraging for seeds, fallen fruit, and insects. It doesn't sing, it doesn't fly far, and it certainly doesn't show off. Instead, it whistles softly, like someone trying not to be overheard. A rising, falling peep-po sound that drifts through dense undergrowth like a whisper from the trees. It gets its name from the bold white patches on each cheek, standing out against its otherwise earth-toned body. But even those don't help you find it, because the white-cheeked partridge moves like a ghost. One crunch of a twig, and it vanishes into the undergrowth, leaving behind nothing
All
but
of it
silence.
comes together in
What's
a compact,
fascinating is that this bird is almost never seen,
that looks like it
even in
shouldn't be
areas
real.
where it's known to
But
be
it
common.
is.
And it's
Bird
fast.
watchers can spend hours
Fairy
in private
pitas are
habitat
secretive
and come
ground
away with
dwellers. They
absolutely
spend most
nothing.
of their time
No
foraging
photo,
in leaf litter,
no call,
hopping instead
no
of walking,
rustle,
picking
just
out
the
worms and
haunting
insects
feeling
with that sharp
that something
little
was
beak.
just there.
You rarely see them in flight.
Style.
And when
And
you
it
do,
knows it.
it's a flash. And then
Sound of
gone.
rustling ant
They're
columns.
quiet and will
Alert
even chase
and
off other
hardwired
birds
for
trying to
stealth.
cut in line at the buffet.
That's why many birds
Visually, it's
spend
surprisingly
years just
classy
hoping to
for
glimpse
such a
one.
messy eater. But here's something
Brown
unexpected.
body, dark
Even though
wings,
they
and a
breed
bold
in
splash
East
of
Asia,
white feathers,
many fairy
like a
pitas
Victorian
migrate
ruff
all
around
the
its
way to
throat.
Borneo for winter. Hence the name.
That's over 2,000
The males wear it
miles.
better, but
For a
both
bird
sexes
barely
look
7
like they're
inches
headed
long.
to a royal
They
dinner.
make the journey alone.
If the dinner was
No
made
flocks,
of panicked
no
insects
guidance.
and mud, just
You
instinct
won't find
and
this bird
invisible
hopping
maps
around
passed down
tree
through
branches.
generations.
It sticks low,
And one more
moves
thing.
quick.
They're
and
called
flicks its
fairy,
tail
not just
constantly
because
as
of
if
its
it's
colors,
twitching with caffeine,
but because they
and
appear
here's the
suddenly.
kicker.
White
And vanish
plumed
just as
antbirds
fast.
are almost impossible.
So if you ever
to
think
find
you
without
saw
finding
one,
ants nearby.
you probably didn't.
So if you ever
But
want to
maybe,
see one,
just maybe,
don't look for the bird.
it saw you first.
Look for the ants.
You won't see it,
then wait.
but it knows you're there.
Because where the ants go,
Most birds live in the
ant
trees.
bird follows.
This one, for 50
lives in
years,
the shadows
no one saw
beneath
it.
them.
Then one
Meet
day,
the white-cheeked
it walked
partridge,
back into history.
a small ground-dwelling
In the dense
bird
forests
found in
of
the
central
forests of
Vietnam, there's a bird that
Laos,
disappeared.
Thailand,
not
and
flew
Myanmar.
away, not
You probably
migrated,
won't see it,
disappeared.
but it might be
For
watching
over
you.
5 decades,
This
no
bird
one
is the
recorded a
definition
single
of
living
stealth.
Edwards's
It
pheasant.
spends most of its
no
life
sightings,
quietly
no
walking
sounds,
through leaf
nothing.
litter on the forest floor.
Scientists feared
foraging
the worst.
for seeds
that
fallen
fallen
fruit,
fruit, deforestation, and
it
hunting
doesn't
had
sing,
wiped it
it
out
doesn't fly
completely.
far,
And
it
it
certainly
quietly
doesn't
moved
show
to the
off.
possibly
Instead,
extinct list.
it whistles softly.
And in the birding world,
like someone
that's
trying
like
not to
reading
be
someone's
overheard.
obituary,
Arising
while still
falling
hoping for a
peace.
miracle. And then one day, sound
blurry
drifts
camera
through
trap
dense
down.
undergrowth,
A pheasant,
like a whisper from the
alive,
trees.
walking.
It gets its name from
Suddenly,
the bold
what was
patches
lost
on
had
each
returned.
cheek. Standing
The
out
Edwards
against
pheasant
pheasant,
is
otherwise
striking,
earth-tone
even
body.
in low light.
But even
Males
those have
don't help you
iridescent
find
blue
it.
black feathers
Because the white
short
partridge
crest
moves
and a
like a
proud
dove.
strut. One
Like a royal guard
wig,
dressed for a midnight
and it
ceremony.
vanishes into the undergrowth.
Females are dull,
leaving behind
camouflage
all of
for
it comes
nesting.
together.
But
What's
no
fascinating
fascinating
is that this
robins
bird
are
is the
almost
future
never
of the
seen.
species,
That looks like it
even in
should.
areas
Unlike
where
chickens
it's known
but it
domestic
is.
pheasants, and it is
Bird
fast.
watchers can
Wild
spend
to the
hours
very
on
peter
its
habitat
habitat
shopping
with
with
They
territory. They
spend
spend
most
most
of
of
their
their
time
no
foraging
photo,
and leaflet,
and
no
no
only
hopping
lives
instead
in
no
the
fragments
fragments
of picking out the haunting feeling that's now
something
heavily
just
protected.
there.
You rarely
And
see the
for
breeze
good.
style
Because
because
this
this bird is more
flash
than just rare,
and then
it's a living comeback story. And conservationists have since started to focus breeding. That's why many birds
Visually
have
it's
spent
surprisingly
years
classy
hoping
for
for
such
but
a
seeing
messy
one in the
bird.
wild,
But here's some
brown
brown
like
body,
spotting a dark
even
wing,
though they breed in
black and white feathers, many Victorian a reminder that they're borneo for winter. Hence, that's over 2,000 worth. And here's a humble bird barely look like the Edwards pheasant. They may have been here if the dinner was no flock, no guidance, waiting, just you won't find this bird hopping around down a generation, hidden in a single island mountain quick. They're called by almost not just because high and twitching mountains, but because they and here's there's a bird most people have never heard of, and even fewer. So if you ever think you saw one, it's called the Salvadorian. So if you ever maybe and it lives nowhere else, it saw you first. This elusive bird is a relative, but it knows you're there because where the ants go. But most birds very different evolution. This one for 50 years shines with iridescent. Then one day the white-cheeked partridge back into his small ground in the dense forests of central Vietnam. Its name literally disappeared. Thailand, not flew away, but don't you probably won't see it. Disappear. The male sports it over 5 decades. This bird with a crisp white tail, living subtle red face, spends most of its life like a tuxedo made of volcanic ash. Scientists feed foraging for seeds that were fallen fruit, blending in with the damp mountain. And it doesn't sing. It doesn't fly for stealth. It is quiet habits only a narrow elevation instead in a garrison mountain. And in the birding, like someone trying like reading someone's obituary, arise while still falling for a miracle. And then one day, sound drifts through dense undergrowth, a pheasant, like a whisper from the trees. It gets its name from suddenly what was lost had returned, standing out Edwards pheasant, otherwise even in low light. But even males have iridescent blue-black feathers because the white short crest moves in a proud strut. One like a royal guard dressed for a midnight, and it vanishes into the other. Females are dull, leaving behind. All of it comes together. But what's fascinating is that this bird, they're the future of a species, looks like it, even in unlike chickens, but it is pheasants, and it is fast, wild to the very peter habitat shopping. Territory spend most of their first summer photo, leaflet, and no hopping instead of fragments of picking out the haunting feeling that's now heavily just there. You rarely see the breeze of style because this bird is more than just rare, and then it's a living comeback story. And will conservationists have since started to focus breeding. That's why many birds visually spend years classy for such. But seeing one in the wild, here's some brown like spotting a dark, even though they
Sau thì bạn sẽ chú cho mình cái phần ô tích ở dưới này, phần tùy chọn ấy, thì bạn hãy tích ở phần loop này. Cái loop này có nghĩa là muốn lặp đi lặp lại của bạn. Bạn một cái video của bạn lặp đi lặp lại trên livestream thì bạn bấm vào phần loop này.
Đang chuẩn bị phải đi biểu
Hoặc
diễn.
là bạn
Chỉ cần tôi
đây,
có
phần
những
tích
cái
này
động
thì
tác nhỏ
reset
như thế này,
playback when
chuyển sang như thế này.
active, có nghĩa là nó
Tí như
sẽ
thế thôi.
cái video của bạn nó sẽ
Cả một cái
reset lại từ đầu khi mà nó được
zona,
active,
nó
có
đau
nghĩa là khi nó
quất,
bật.
nó rút lên. Trời ơi.
Nó với cả một cái lưu ý nữa là bạn
Đúng là
có
như
thể
người
điều chỉnh tốc độ video của bạn nhé.
Tôi cảm
Đây,
giác
thì
như
bạn
là
sẽ
mình